Hello and welcome to Samuel Ramey Behind the Curtain, where we'll be hearing anecdotes about Samuel Ramey's life and career offstage or behind the curtain. I hope you enjoy this series. Hello, welcome back.
Hi.
Today we're going to talk about some of the famous singers with whom you have worked.
Alrighty.
And let's start with megastar Marilyn Horn.
Oh, yes. Jackie.
Jackie.
I'm privileged to be one of her friends and allowed to call her Jackie.
Yes. When did you first meet Marilyn Horn, or when did you first work with her?
We worked together in 1975 at the Houston Grand Opera. They decided for Marilyn to do a production of Handel's Rinaldo. And this is sort of the birth of what would later become my Metropolitan Opera debut. But anyway, production was done, staged by Frank Corsaro, and that was my first time working with Marilyn. A lot of the staging rehearsals, took place at a studio in New York, and I remember one day showing up at this place on 57th Street, and standing out on the street, on the sidewalk by the door, were Dom DeLuise and Jim Nabors. They were just standing there, and I went up to the door to go in, and they said, "Oh, are you rehearsing with Marilyn?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "Oh, they said, could you let us in? We just like to go up and say hello. We're both good friends of Marilyn's." And I knew that Marilyn, when she sang in Hawaii, which is where Jim Nabors lives, she used to stay at his house, and I'm not sure how she knew Dom DeLuise. Yes, later on, I don't remember the year. On New Year's Eve at the Metropolitan Opera, they used to do Die Fledermaus, and then they would have at the party scene. They would have surprise guests come. Well, one year I was one of the surprise guests, and but they hired Dom DeLuise to play the part of the jailer in the last scene, and he was very funny. And I remember sitting and chatting with him at the dinner up on the Grand Tier after the performance. He was a very delightful man. We talked about all of his sons that were becoming well-known actors.
And Jim Nabors, you ran into him after that again. There was that
Yes, there was
concert in San Francisco.
And when I was singing there, I think it was when I did Louise. I think it was the San Francisco Opera they sort of feted Marilyn and had a big evening for her. And Jim Nabors came as a guest. I can remember him getting up to give a speech, and he got up and looked out and said, "Well, golly!" And then I saw him some years later. We went to I had a gig to do a concert in Honolulu, and he showed up at the concert and came backstage and said hello. So
he was so nice.
He was very nice, very nice. Yes, my agent Matthew and Marilyn are very good friends, and he brought her to a performance at City Opera. I was singing the part of the tutor in Rossini's Contori, and he brought Marilyn to a performance. And the next year, she was going to be doing a recording of Gli Italiani in Algeri of Rossini, of course. And I remember she talked to Matthew about the possibility of my doing Mustafa on this recording, and would I be interested? And Matthew said, I'm sure he was. So eventually that came about, and we did that recording in the spring, late spring, early summer of 1980. So the L'Italiana recording, well, like I said, was in the late spring or early summer of 1980. And Marilyn and I were also, that summer, we had been booked to sing, to do a new production of Rossini's Semiramide at the festival in Aix-en-Provence. And with Montserrat Caballé. And Marilyn came into um, a recording session or a rehearsal, I don't remember what, but she came in and took me aside and said, Sam, I have I have an interesting story. I got a call from Martin Katz, her longtime accompanist, and he said that he had been called last sort of late, probably because of a cancellation, to go to London to play a recital for Montserrat Caballé at Covent Garden, I believe. And so he told Jackie that he was calling her from London, and uh, he said they rehearsed the program and everything, and they were just talking about possible encores. So Marty played the introduction to the aria Bel Raggio, which is Semiramide's big showcase aria, and he played it, and he said Montserrat looked at him and said, "My, that's beautiful. What is that?"
And you were scheduled to start working on it
Yes, Semiramide was
in a couple
scheduled to
of
start
weeks.
rehearsals like not long after we finished this recording. So we knew that some rehearsal pianist, which turned out to be John Fisher, was going to be spending a lot of time with Miss Caballé at her hotel. Well, she was also very famous for canceling. And I remember during Semiramide is when I got this call to go to Rome to audition for Maestro Muti, which turned out to be not for Maestro Muti, but anyway. So I was, talking. I think I was talking to Montserrat and Merrill. I don't about leaving, going to X, and when I was going to do it, between performances, and Montserrat said, "Well, you could always cancel."
After the L'Italiana recording, you went on to do Semiramide and X. That was the next thing you did with
Yeah,
Jackie. How was X?
it was beautiful. I remember we found a really nice. I think the gentleman was an architect and traveled a lot, and he had his own house, but very near the house, uh, he had a small guest house which he rented out to artists when they came. So rented that for. I think I had been there the year before in X. I sang a production of Figaro in X in '79, and then for that year of 1980, stayed there again. So yeah, beautiful.
And I assume that your agent, Tom Graham, your European agent,
Hmm.
would come to at least one performance.
Yeah, he showed up. I remember he came to Figaro and he stayed in our little guest house with us, but we didn't have a very nice guest room. So the next time he came, when he came for Semiramide, he asked if we knew of a hotel, and there was a hotel in downtown Aix called the Hotel des Bains, and they had a really nice pool. So anyway, he made arrangements to stay there, and I remember him calling me and thanking me profusely for the information on this hotel because he was enjoying it very much. He would spend his days out by the pool and then would be surrounded by all of the topless ladies at the pool. My French agent, Claude Stricker, was staying there and wanted to have a meeting, so I went over to to the to the hotel, and she said we'll meet out by the pool. So I went out by the pool, and of course, lots of topless ladies, and actually there were some of the Semiramide choristers were there. And I remember several of the young ladies in the chorus came running over to me to say hello, and I didn't know where to look.
The difference between Americans and Europeans.
Yes,
You sang Rinaldo at the Arts Center in Ottawa
yes,
with Marilyn Horn.
yeah, that came about in 1982. Um, Ronaldo, yes, this production was built around Marilyn at the Arts Festival in Ottawa, and then it was eventually it was the Metropolitan Opera decided to pick up the production to bring the production to the Met for Marilyn, and and I wasn't. They had in mind somebody else to do the part of Argante, but Marilyn and put her foot down and insisted on having me do it. So it led to my Metropolitan Opera debut.
Yes, Marilyn was
A
very
good,
instrumental
yeah,
in many things in your career, I
a
believe.
good friend. Yes,
A good friend.
still a good friend.
Yes, she's amazing. Oh, but she's terrific. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like working with her, rehearsing with her, watching her on stage?
Oh, it's just it was always a voice lesson. I mean, just watching her work, rehearse, and perform is just like having a voice lesson, really. And just a delightful, down to earth lady. Uh, just I just love her.
So I'd like to talk a little bit more about your Metropolitan Opera debut, since we're talking about Jackie
Hmm.
and how she was instrumental in getting you into this production. Uh, did you find it, how did you feel about that being your debut?
Well, very good actually, because the role of Argante and Ronaldo, while it's a very important part, it's a very kind of a vocal showpiece a little bit. So it was a really a perfect role to make my debut at the Met in, uh, and and to debut make my debut with Marilyn at my side was fantastic, and Benita Valente was the soprano, and she was also a beautiful singer and a wonderful performer and a delightful lady to work with as well. So yeah, it was a great night.
Who was conducting that?
Yes, the gentleman that conducted was the director of the festival in Canada. His name is Mario Bernardi, and so he came with the production to the Met. And I remember after the performance, there was a lot of royalty from Canada. The Prime Minister, Pierre Trudeau, was there, met him that night. And so, yeah, it was quite a special night.
Uh, we've already mentioned Montserrat Caballé and her obviously not having worked on Semi-Ramide 2 weeks before you were going to start. You also did a Norma recording with her
Yes,
and Joan Sutherland.
right.
And who else was in that?
I don't remember the year that was. I think it was around 1990, but I'm not sure. Well, it was conducted by Maestro Bonning, Richard Bonning, Joan Sutherland's husband, and the tenor was Luciano Pavarotti. So it was. I wondered what I was doing in this star-studded cast, but we had kind of a fun time. I remember the day of our first call. I think it was just for a musical rehearsal out at the Watford Town Hall outside of London. There's a lot of recordings done there. And they find these town halls to do all these recordings. And so we're all we're all there. Luciano's there, and Joan Sutherland's there, and Richard Bonning's there, but we're waiting for Caballé to arrive. And so finally her car arrives, and she comes in, and she has a bouquet of flowers, and she walks over to Joan Sutherland, and she knelt in front of Joan and said, and handed her this bouquet of flowers. And Sutherland said, "Oh, flowers for the prima donna?" And Cavalier looked up at her and smiled and said, "No, flowers from the prima donna." Famous story. Famous story.
Did those two get along?
Oh yeah, they got along. Yes, very well. Yeah.
And Joan Sutherland, what was it like working with her? I mean, she's another icon.
Well, she's just delightful, very laid back. When for recordings, I didn't work with her much on stage, but I did a couple of different recordings with her, and during recordings she would just sit up on the stage and knit. She'd just sit there and knit you know, when she wasn't doing anything. Very delightful lady.
Well, we've talked about some of the divas
Hmm.
with whom you've worked. Right. Let's move on to a tenor. The infamous Neil Schickoff.
Yes.
Fantastic tenor,
Yeah.
really excellent technique, and he is fun.
Yeah. Yes, we always had a good time working together.
And you sort of liked to push his buttons a little
A
bit
little bit, yeah.
because it
Yeah.
was just so easy.
Yes. Yes. I'm the first time we weren't working together, but we were at the Santa Fe Opera together in the summer of 1975. I can't remember what was he doing, L'Heure Espagnole, something Spanish Hour. I think something like that. He was singing that. I was singing Escamillo and Carmen. But we used to socialize together all the time. We actually played golf a number of times together, and he's very competitive. Neil's very competitive in whatever you do together. He's very competitive.
Is that why you decided to make sure you had a bigger TV in your apartment in Hamburg?
Oh, that was in Hamburg. Yes, we were staying in. We were both staying in apartments that were managed by our good friends Klaus, Jürgen, and Klaus, two German guys that owned a hotel, Pension York, and they also had these apartments that they would rent out to primarily singers. They were both big opera fans, and so Neil and I were booked in apartments in the same building. He first I went up to his apartment, and we looked around his apartment, and it was a nice apartment. And then there was a TV in his apartment, and I thought, oh, yeah, but I think my TV is a little bigger than that. And he said, no, no, it's not. He said, I've been in that apartment. It's not. It's the same. So I said, well, maybe so. So later on, he came down to see the apartment I was staying in, and looking around. And all of a sudden, he looked and he saw the TV in my apartment. And he said, "Your TV is bigger than mine." I said, "Oh, is it?" very competitive.
He's funny too. You sang in Aix-en-Provence at the same time, not in the same production.
Yes, in 1979, I was doing Marriage of Figaro, and he was doing Werther, and he was staying in a house in town, in the city proper, and I know he complained. He said, "Oh, it's so difficult to get to sleep." He says, "We have this backyard, and there's a fountain back there, and when it gets dark, as it gets darker, the fountain is full of frogs, and they start croaking, wow, wow, making this sound, and it just goes for hours." But then he said, "Listen," he said, "I made a recording," and so he had this tape recorder, so he played them for us, and he said, that was funny. So I remember going over to his house, and we were sitting around, and in the middle of the day, this was, and he said, "Watch this," and he took this recording of the frogs, and he went out near the fountain, and he turned the recording on of the frogs making the croaking, and it started them up. The real frogs there, they started up with the recording.
And was it deafening?
Yes, it was. I don't know how he slept.
You actually sang in the same production together when you made your debut in La Boheme at Chicago
Yes,
Lyric Opera.
Lyric Opera of Chicago. Yes, he and Leona Mitchell were the Mimi, and were the Rodolfo and Mimi, and yeah, we made our debut. I'm pretty sure it was his debut at the Lyric. I'm I'm not positive about that. Um, but
And
we
they've been brought in, you said, because
Yes, they were brought in because originally, when the production was first planned, it was to have been Jose Carreras and Katia Ricciarelli singing Rodolfo and Mimi, but they, I think it was because the dollar had gotten strong, and so they canceled for
financial reasons.
financial reasons. That's what the scuttlebutt was anyway at the time.
But Neil is famously a nervous singer.
Yes, I have um, a kind of a delightful story about that. We were singing together in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We were doing a production of Faust together, and I remember I was sitting in my dressing room. I think I was putting makeup on my hands, and I hear this frantic knock on my dressing room door, and in bursts Neil. And Neil's going on about, he says, "Oh, I don't know what," he says, "I've just finished vocalizing, and my high notes are just, I'm not very easy, and I have no low voice at all." And he's just going on and on. And I've heard this before, so I'm just sitting there doing the makeup on my hands. All of a sudden he stopped, and he sort of looked at me, and he said, "Sam, don't you ever get nervous?" And I said, "Well, Neil, I'm always a little bit nervous." And he said, "Well, what's a little bit nervous? I mean, do you feel like you're gonna die?"
The drama. We met him. I think this was the first time I met Neil.
I don't remember.
Okay. We ran into him backstage, and you went up to him, gave him a hug to wish him luck, and uh, he's like, "Oh, it's good to see you. It's good to see you." And then he steps back and he said, "Are you wearing cologne? Are you trying to kill me?"
That's Neil. Yep.
That's actually a lot of singers. There are a lot of
Yeah,
singers that
that's
are
true.
very sensitive to
That's true.
perfumes and colognes, and boy, if you wear it around them when they have to sing, woo!
Yeah, I know at the Met there are several singers that put a sign on their dressing room door, "Don't come in if you're wearing cologne."
Yeah. since we mentioned Katia Ricciarelli,
I had met her once at City Opera because Jose Carreras sang with City Opera when he was singing with City Opera when I first started, and we did some La Boheme performances at City Opera together. And Katya, they were a couple, so Katya came came to New York, and I remember meeting her during a performance. She was back in the dressing room area.
and then you sang in Pesaro together.
Yes, we sang Pesaro together. We did La Donna del Lago together, and we did um,
La Gazzaladra.
Il Viaggio a Reims together, and yes, and then La Gazzaladra.
And what happened during La Gazzaladra?
Well, that was a bit dicey. Um, we had a scene together. Um, I'm wooing her and she's spurning me. So at one point during this scene, she is supposed to stage slap me. Well, the opening night performance, it came time for that, and during rehearsal, she had just done the normal fake stage slap. Well, at the time came up to that time, and during the performance, she came back and really hit me hard, and it was so hard that it broke my front tooth.
Any idea why she did that?
Well, it was never confirmed to me. I think she may have been upset. I was having a fairly nice success with the audience, getting a lot of applause, and she may have been upset by that.
Not
That's
that
only
she had.
speculation on my part, but I don't know.
Well, she had a little issue with the audience when you were doing La Donna del Lago as well, right?
That's right. Yes, there was, well, the production of Donna del Lago, she, she and the mezzo Lucia Valentini Terrani were the two main leads. And so at the end of the performance, when it came time for the bows, um, I remember the first night, um, Ricciarelli there were a few boos when she came for her solo bow, and which, upsets most anybody. So the next performance was interesting. It came time for the solo bows. Katya took her solo bow, and applause, great applause, and Valentini Terrani took her bow, and there was a smattering of boos for her. Well, then, the bows ended. We were all up in our dressing rooms getting ready to leave, and all of a sudden we hear my dressing room was upstairs, the ladies were downstairs, but we hear that, and the tenor Don Rafanti was upstairs near where I was, and we hear this carrying on downstairs, shouting and screaming and slamming of doors and just very loud screaming. And so we find out that the husband of Lucia Valentini Terrani had gone into Katya's dressing room and accused her, she and her husband, Pipo Baudo, of paying people to boo his wife, to boo Lucia. So, and we were doing a recording of the opera between performances there in Pesaro. So during the recording sessions, the two ladies worked. I mean, they're together a lot in this opera, and it was very icy, very.
So that's the other kind of diva
Yeah,
that we're talking about.
right.
Now, I'm sure a lot of it has to do with nerves, pressure. Different people handle it differently.
Hmm.
They're just different personalities, but it's not always that much fun working with a colleague who is that kind of diva.
Right. It's never easy.
I think Neil Shikoff could talk about another diva that's sort of in that category, couldn't he? Ileana Koturubash?
Oh, Ileana, yes. Yes. I remember Neil telling me a story. We were doing Neil and I were doing Hoffman, Tales of Hoffman together in Hamburg, and he had been there earlier, maybe it was the same season, to do Faust, a Faust production. Um, they didn't offer me the devil in that production. It was Ruggero Raimondi. But the soprano was Ileana Kotrobach. And for some reason, she and Neil during this rehearsal period and production didn't get along well. I don't know for what reason. I don't know. I have no idea. But I remember Neil telling me the story that he went to the theater for a performance to find out that Ileana was not feeling well and they were going to make an announcement. She was going to perform, but they were going to make an announcement that she was, indisposed and begged the audience's indulgence. So Neil decided to go in and see her, and so he went. He said he went in and told her. He said, "Oh, I understand you're not feeling well," and he said, "You just take it easy and just take it real easy, and I'll act around you." And he said, she turned to him and said, "Oh, you can act?"
And you have another story about her from something she said to somebody else.
Eugene Cohn is started out as one of the great operatic coaches. He that summer I was in Santa Fe in 1975. Eugene was there as well, and he taught me Mephistopheles that summer. He would come to my house where I had a piano, and he would play, and he could sing all the other parts. His Marguerite was especially delightful, um, but he taught me Mephistopheles. And but then later, Eugene graduated, and he became a very, very fine conductor. And he was conducting, I think, a run of La Boheme at the Met with Ileana Courtebache as Mimi. I think it was Boheme. And they did not see eye to eye. They didn't get along. He was standing near the exit and talking to somebody, and Ileana came near and said, "Oh, Eugene, tonight you were especially bad."
Oh, one more story about Neil Shikoff.
Yes, we were doing Hoffman together at the Royal Opera Covent Garden in London, and one night the performance, came to really the end, almost the end. Uh, I had to stand in the wings on stage right, waiting for the scene to change. Um, the set for the epilogue was on an elevator and would come up from the basement. So we had to wait for it to be in place and then go out and get on set. So came up, it got in place. I went up and sat down, and then the music starts, and, and it's the epilogue. It's like 5 minutes long, and so I'm sitting there, and Hoffman starts to sing, but it's not Neil singing. He had he canceled the epilogue, and so they brought his cover just to sing
last 5 minutes.
the 4 or 5 minute epilogue.
Did he just feel like he wasn't up to those last 4 minutes?
I guess not.
Well, Neil, though, is a good colleague.
Yes.
And fun to work with, and that's one of the reasons why it's so fun to tell stories about Neil, too, because you like him so well.
Yep.
We will have many more stories.
Yes, we
about you've performed with everyone, so. But I hope that you enjoyed these stories.
Yes, hope you enjoyed.
Keep your questions coming.
Yep.
We promise eventually we will get to them.
Yes, we will.
And please continue to watch this series.
Please be, yeah. Look out for us, and we'll see you again. Okay? Bye.